Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Scott Luton and Greg White with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's live stream. Gregory, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. So, excuse me if I keep looking back and forth like this because I've just set up my new studio and it you're over here,
Okay.
y'all are over here. So I haven't quite got the laptop right in front of the camera. So
Well, you
if
look
I'm
great.
looking over here, I'm looking at you.
Okay. So you're not telling me no is what you're saying. You're not telling me no. You're just looking at different screens. Okay.
Right.
Well, you look you look good and you sound good. And folks, speaking of good, and great, this is a great show here teed up here today, right, Greg? We've
Yeah,
got
it is.
We've got the buzz back with you every Monday, as y'all know, 12 noon Eastern time, where we walk through a variety of news and developments across global business, across global supply chain, you name it. And Greg, today we've got a big guest that's going to be joining us about 12:25 p.m. Eastern time. Regine Villain, the Chief Supply Chain and Support Services Officer at Ochsner Health System, is back with us. Greg, are you ready for this?
I'm ready. Are
Man,
they ready? That's the question.
so
You.
we're gonna, as y'all know, as many folks know, we've been had a really popular first season of a healthcare supply chain leadership series here at Supply Chain Now. And Regine was part of that, which we're very grateful for. And we're gonna take so we're gonna have a big healthcare flavor here on the buzz here today, Greg. And I think it's fair to say, Greg, that that's probably a space that more folks should better understand in supply chain and elsewhere. Would you agree with that, Greg?
Well, your life depends on it, so I'd say yes.
Right. And yeah, excellent point. Excellent point. So stay tuned. About 12:25, Regine will be joining us. And then, of course, we want to hear from you. So give us your take in the comments. Throughout the show, we're gonna be tackling three stories in the front end, and then learning more from Regine's perspective before we call it a day. And Greg, if folks are listening to this podcast replay, which we drop usually every Friday morning, you ought to consider joining us live on LinkedIn or YouTube or other social media channel of your choosing. Because, Greg, we'd love to hear from these folks, right?
Because who listens to a podcast without seeing the podcast or something? I
Right. Speaking of
yes.
Leah Luton,
Oh, yeah.
mom, aka Mom from Aiken, South Carolina, is with us here today. Hello, Mom. Love you. Great to see you. Good to talk with you earlier.
Hi, Mom. Send money.
That's right. Randy, great to see you. Let us know where you're tuned in from. Welcome, everybody. We got a great show in store here today. All right. So, Greg, as
Yes.
always, we love to help folks. We love sharing resources with folks, and we got a couple we want to share with y'all on the front end here today. So, Greg, over the weekend, we dropped With That Said, which is our almost weekly LinkedIn newsletter. Well, I guess it hits LinkedIn, and also hits everybody's email inbox. And we talked about a wide range of things, and we really focused, Greg, on a lot of maybe some news stories that aren't on people's radar. It's kind of what we do here today. Did you happen to check that out, Gregory?
Yeah, I did. And some interesting news
Yeah.
also. Yeah, but go. Please go. Please go. You go first. You go first.
Well, the thing that what I love the quote that we featured up at the top, and I think it's very related to news, is this is one of my faves from Mark Twain. Quote: "It ain't what you don't know that gets you in trouble; it's what you know for sure that just ain't so." End quote. If that's not more relevant today than ever before, perhaps, Greg.
I like that. Yeah. Mark Twain was really genius
Mm,
in a sort of Southern accent kind of way. I mean, I like the way he used that language, right? That a farmer would use to tell you
mm,
just genius things. His
agreed.
observations on the world are astounding.
And he kept it simple and
Mm-hmm.
funny and truthful. Well, I think he was wise beyond his years, perhaps. And I heard he
Right.
wrote some good books, Greg. I don't know.
I didn't
Uh,
know that.
so, folks, check out With That Said. Let us know what you think about it. Be one of the 23,000, almost 3,180 subscribers. Give us your feedback. We thrive off that. All right, Greg.
I love
Before
the precision in your numbers.
well, you know,
23,180. Oh, we just added them.
well, as we put these graphics together each week, it just so happens that the sub number is conveniently located right at the top of the newsletter, and so it's been neat to see that continue to grow. All right, so asking and they shall deliver. Randy's tuned in from Greenville, South Carolina, the upstate.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Gino's back with us from North Alabama. Great to see you, Gino. Looking forward to hearing your take throughout. And Harry checking in from Chicago via LinkedIn. Great to see you, Harry. Looking forward to your
Getting
comments.
chilly in Chicago.
That's right. All right. One other resource I want to share with y'all is the upcoming live stream we've got this Wednesday, 12 noon. Folks, we're going to dive into synchronized planning with big time outcomes with Ulrich and Christians with Orkla. They're doing some really big things. So join us 12 noon Eastern time on Wednesday. Greg, should be a neat conversation, right?
Yeah, I mean, this whole notion of synchronized planning is really critical. And now, finally, we have the data available that allows us to do it. Right. So,
excellent point.
So much of this stuff was such a challenge before we had all this robust data all over.
Right. I'm with you. And I with you just sharing that little tidbit, I can't wait for the full-blown conversation on Wednesday. Okay. And we dropped a link to both. With that said, one click away to checking that out, and the live stream on Wednesday. You're one click away there in the comments. Big thanks to Catherine and Amanda behind the scenes that help make it happen. Okay, Greg, I really wish, as we dive into the first of three stories before we welcome on our wonderful guest, Regine, here today, I really wish we had more good news. But it's been a really rough time for many folks, right, in industry and outside of industry for that matter. And we're going to start with this Convoy story. So, Greg, let me share this, and I can't wait to get your take here. Everyone's talking about the demise of Convoy, sadly. As reported by our friends here at GeekWire, the Seattle-based logistics tech startup is closing its primary operations and laying off all but a handful of its employees. Last week, Dan Lewis, the co-founder and CEO of Convoy, sent a memo to the organization that included the phrase, "Today is your last day at the company." Just back in 2022, though, it was a much brighter time. Convoy had raised $260 million based on a valuation of $3.8 billion. In April 2022, the organization announced that it had expected to surpass $1 billion in annual revenue. But it wasn't long after that unfortunately the layoffs began. The company would eventually downsize from about 1,500 team members to about 500 before, of course, closing of its primary operations last week. Now, folks are pointing to a variety of factors, of course, that incredibly challenging freight market out there, to a lack of an ability for Convoy to be able to keep up with innovative features as many of its competitors out in the market. And some, Greg, even point to how Convoy had a conflict amongst leadership, whether it was a logistics company or a tech company. Nevertheless, a lot of folks are out of a job and will be looking for new opportunities. So let's all see if we can help out however we can. So, Greg, I'm really looking forward to hearing your take on Convoy.
Well, let's start with some good news on that front. Slink recently, you remember Slink?
Mm-hmm.
Slink, Chris Kirchner, the founder and CEO, was recently indicted by the feds for defrauding investors out of $25 million. So hopefully he'll be going to prison. He recently slunk out from under his rock and mentioned that Slink will be shutting down operations as well. You know, they took the company away from him and tried to save it, but it was too late. So the good news is the real crooks hopefully are going to jail. Alleged and indicted by the federal government crooks, who wins 98% of their cases, by the way. So it's only a 98% chance that he goes to prison and is guilty. But we'll let the courts sort that out. So that's the good news. There are real criminals, right? This was a monumental mistake, horrible management, incredibly poor judgment on the investors, because as it turns out, digital brokerages are just brokerages. I could have easily ended the conversation of whether they were a logistics company or whether they were a tech company when they started the company. They were a logistics company. They, every one of these, I've been pitched by dozens and dozens and dozens of these digital brokerages, and it's easy to make the distinction that they are brokerages because they all fall in love with the incredible fees that you get for brokerage. And then they try to attach technology to it that sometimes is proprietary, which is good, and sometimes isn't. I mean, we've seen the not complete collapse, but the distinct fall of, even billion-dollar investments. Well, I think Convoy did have $1 billion invested, right? That's right. Like Flexport. And it turns out they are just brokerages with a lot of reports and technology, and some of them are able to create intellectual property from it, not just pile reports and things on it. And that gives them a bit of a distinction. But the truth is, the brokerage is such a heavy draw in terms of revenue that it's easy to get distracted when you're going through this. So, the real answer, a tech company would be a marketplace. It would not be a brokerage as such. It would be acting in a disruptive fashion instead of the 10 to 40% fees that brokers take. It would be taking a small transaction fee, just like other marketplaces have that have disrupted businesses, but that is incredibly difficult to execute. So it's a tragedy. And by the way, Scott, they also got $100 million in venture debt at the same time. So they really burned through $365 million in just over 18 months.
Wow.
That's $2 million a month. No, that's $20 million a month. They burned $20 million. Am I doing the math right?
I need to break out my calculator. It's a lot of.
Yes, they burned through $20 million.
Wow.
So,
well,
it's a tragedy for the people, and some of those who are actual tech people, they'll find jobs. And of course, those on the brokerage side, there's still a ton of brokerage business out there, so they'll be able to land somewhere. But I chalk this up to one of those FOMO moments in investment, where investors who didn't know anything about the industry, and frankly, the founders didn't either. Dan Lewis didn't know anything about logistics, and thought they understood what the disruptive force was that they were applying, but they didn't.
Well, I really appreciate your take, and to all of our audience out there, hey, reach out to the Convoy members in your network, connect with them. What a tragedy, as Greg put it there. So we'll see. I think they kept a small contingent to see if they can find some strategic options, Greg, for the company.
Yeah, strategic options means selling off the assets. The company will cease operations, is what I read, and it was about 8 people, I think, that they kept. Wow. So we'll keep just liquidate whatever's left and wind it down. It's not uncommon. I've had to do it myself.
Really?
Yeah. Not a pleasant day.
No, it is not. Well, hey, sending good vibes out to all the Convoy team members, and we'll see if they, to Greg's point, can find new opportunities quickly. All right. I wish we had some better news with our second story, but
we do. Remember, Chris Kirchner could be going to prison.
Well, well, you know what? We shouldn't glaze over that. That's right. It's a good point, because you saw that early on. When bad actors do bad things and nefarious teams with other people's money, it's good that they're held accountable. So
I agree with that 100%. Yep. It really is. All joking aside, it is an opinion aside, Chris, because I know I'm going to get a nasty gram from you, but you don't have a leg to stand on. Well, but all joking aside, it is good when the truly bad get their comeuppance, because, like Dan Lewis, just made a mistake, a monumental and very impactful mistake, and so did the investors, but just a mistake, right? He did not have any ill will or, didn't take advantage of people or defraud them, or just, at the very least, right?
Right. Because, I know we throw a bunch of numbers out there, with layoffs and stuff, but man, each one of those numbers is someone's job and career and family. So, So anyway,
There
let's.
is, Scott, though there is. I mean, I think a lot of these people will land elsewhere, and there is a certain sense of freedom because I know a few folks, we know a few folks at Convoy, and they felt the heavy weight of what was going on there even before it was apparent, right? And just having that heavy weight off of your psyche is freeing.
Yes.
So their eyes will be wide open. They'll go into their next business much more aware. They'll ask the right questions, right? They'll dig a little bit deeper, and they'll be better for it. And frankly, they'll be great resources for the companies that they go to because of it.
Excellent point. Excellent point. So let's shift gears. Let's talk about this housing market. And it's really, some of y'all, a handful may be asking, well, why are we talking housing on the supply chain buzz or the buzz or any? Well, it is critically important, the housing market, for our economy, depending on what numbers you look at, anywhere from 18 to 22, 24%.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the housing market. So as reported here by CNBC, it was painful, but now, Greg, it is just plain ugly. For the first time since 2000, mortgage rates have hit a whopping 8%. Now, it's a bit of a perfect storm. And as we've always put out there, I am not an economist, but I'm going to play one here on this live stream. It's a bit of a perfect storm. Rates up, prices up, but sales down and supply down. Now, on that last point about supply, Greg, did you know that the Great Recession and all those ensuing repercussions caused many home builders to build less homes over the last 10, 12 years, which is one of the primary causes of the lack of supply? And according to the U.S. Census Bureau, new housing starts in September 2023 were up about 7% over the previous month, but still down over 7 percentage points year over year when compared to September 2022. So they're not making up that ground. From a supply chain standpoint, though, here's a little bit of good news. The good news is that home builders are reporting far less problems when it comes to getting what they need to build houses. However, there still seems to be challenges, especially associated with procuring electrical equipment like switch gears, transformers, you name it. Also, one last data point here, Greg. Sales of previously owned homes in September 2023, so just last month, well, they dropped to the slowest pace since October 2010, 13 years ago. So, Greg, your thoughts on what we're seeing in the housing market?
Yeah, it's crazy. It is now 52% more expensive to buy a home than to rent one. And that is higher than during the Great Recession, when it was only 35% more expensive to buy a home than to rent one. And all of those combinations of issues that you talked about make it one of the worst times to buy a home in history. In fact, I would strongly suggest that if you're in the market, just rent right now. My oldest daughter, they sold their house at the peak, went and rented. The other thing, this is another dynamic in the rental industry, Scott, is rents are now not rising as high, or in some cases falling. And both of my daughters, my oldest and my middle daughter, both rent, and both of them had just minor increases to their rent. It probably won't go up after the next 6 or 12 months, whatever they renewed for, because the market there is softening as well. As people batten down the hatches and tighten their belts and all those other cliches that we use to talk about getting sensible with our money.
Yeah, surviving.
What's that?
Surviving.
Yeah.
Surviving. Check this out, Greg. We got Mary Kate Love is with us in the house from Metro Chicago, or Chicagoland, maybe I should say. She says, can attest to this. Just bought a house, and that 8% hurts. Also, no supply, Mary Kate says. Well, hey, I'm not laughing at your pain, Mary Kate. We're laughing maybe to keep from crying here these days.
Yeah.
Gino says,
you have to laugh or you might cry, right?
That's right. Got to maintain that sense of humor. Goodness. Gino says, the only demand is in new builds where you can buy down the interest. All other is dead, per Gino's family in real estate, is what they're telling him.
So, we have a home in a resort area.
Yep.
And what what some home sellers are doing is buying down the mortgage a couple of points on behalf of the buyer,
right,
to get them to buy. So, I mean, just at the same time, I just saw a house listed for $2,461 a square foot.
wow.
So, I mean, it's a resort. Right?
Goodness
But
gracious, that's out of my zip code. It's out of my universe, there, Greg.
yeah, right. I didn't even know. I'd never even thought about paying that much a square foot, right? But there are some crazy dynamics, and when the market gets crazy like this, if you can, but only if you can, let it swirl a little bit and settle out. But I'm telling you, not an economist, never been an economist. Do have a minor in economics. But this is my disclaimer: right every bit as often as they are, which is all. So, but seriously, should consider renting.
Yes. Great advice. Great advice. We're going to keep our finger on the pulse of this market for sure. Y'all check out this. It's an interesting read. Really takes a deep dive, touches on a variety of things that Greg just shared as well. So check it out from our friends at CNBC. A couple of quick comments before we hit one more story. And folks, hang on, because the good news is this great guest we got coming probably about 5 minutes from now or so. David Glover says, and yet most salaries haven't caught up with this increase. It's crazy what could be afforded many years ago versus today. Well said. Mary Kate says those buy downs that Greg referenced, very common now. In fact, extraordinarily common versus kind of the track record of how they've always been used. So great point there.
Well, that's a signal that the market is cooling. It's just another, it's just another negotiating tactic. Just like instead of lowering the price,
yep,
right, buy down the mortgage, or maybe even in addition to.
Yep. Well, I wish we could see with our third story as we make this little segue into our third story before our guests here today. I wish we could say that we could all sink our teeth into comfort food during these challenging times, but that we're seeing some historic prices there as well. So let's talk butter for a second. Simply put, according to our chief culinary analyst, Amanda Luton, butter is ridiculous. That's right. As reported by our friends at Supply Chain Dive, butter prices have hit record highs in October. Of course, just in time for the holiday baking season. Now, many are pointing to market challenges. For example, milk supply is down. So that's, of course, a key ingredient in butter. Imports are down. Demand for buttercream in other food manufacturing is up. And butter production in August was at about a 5-year low. So, Greg, your thoughts on what we're seeing here in, of all places, the butter market?
Well, this one really hits home for me because my wife, her family owned a bakery distributorship, and they got me hooked on buttercream icing, which is, by the way, the best way to make icing, only way in my opinion. And now butter is expensive, so it's a real problem. I mean, when it affects me, then it's a real problem.
Right.
No, I mean, this is cyclical. These kind of things happen as, I think I can't even remember all the reasons that we have milk production down and all that sort of thing, but we know we have had that down, and it takes a while for these things to come home to roost. So it happens frequently with these commodity items. What I was thinking about on this, Scott, is it used to happen and people just said, oh, butter has gotten expensive. Commodities do that. Well, I think now we're starting to see how much the supply chain plays into that, how much impact supply chain has on that. And yet there isn't much that you can do from an operational standpoint of the supply chain. Right. So, it's not that the trucks are too expensive that are hauling milk around. It's that there isn't enough of it. So
yes, kind of reminds me what you shared there of another Mark Twainism. I think this is Mark Twain. Everybody talks about the weather, but no one does anything about it.
That is Mark Twain. Yeah,
that is Mark Twain. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
everybody talks about the butter, but
ain't nothing we can do.
Ain't nothing.
T Squared, great to have you in the house. T Squared.
When you said home earlier, I was looking for T Squared in the in the comments. Yeah, he said it today, Tyrone. So
just for you.
Yeah.
For you, Tyrone, who holds down the fort for us on YouTube and hails from Baltimore. I bet he's happy about the Baltimore Ravens game yesterday. But he says greedflation ain't gone nowhere.
Well, okay, so let's talk about that. I mean, that's going to also increase milk production, and the higher prices. I mean, this is the ebb and flow of economics, right? The higher prices will cause people to produce more, and of course they'll overproduce, and of course then they'll bring the prices dramatically down.
That's right.
Not down as fast as their costs go down, but it will go down. It's funny how fast costs go up and how slowly they come down.
Shoots up and slows down. All right. So good stuff there. Thanks for all the great comments, and keep them coming. We got a great guest I want to introduce here today, a great repeat guest, a Hall of Fame guest. Maybe we'll touch on that here in just a moment. I want to introduce and welcome in our friend, Regine Villain, Chief Supply Chain and Support Services Officer with Ochsner Health System. Regine, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I was just on my way to get some butter.
Stock up now, or maybe, I don't know, maybe don't stock up now, but regardless, it is so great to have you back. We really enjoyed our sit down a few months back. Congrats on some of the recognition that we alluded to a minute or two ago. Maybe we'll touch on that in a minute. But Greg, what we uncovered about Regine is y'all, and maybe the three of us, but certainly y'all two have something big in common. You both love to travel. So Regine, before we get into some topics related to healthcare industry and some other things, tell us first, over the last year or so, what's been one of your favorite places to visit?
By far, in the last year, actually, I spent about 3 weeks in Japan. I'm sorry, 3 weeks in Japan, and it was absolutely phenomenal. We traveled up, down, south, north, east, west in Japan. As you guys know, it's not a big island, but such an amazing culture and great food. Unfortunately, I came back with a very expensive habit, which is Wagyu beef.
Oh boy. And once you've had Japanese Wagyu, I'm telling you, Regine, don't even bother with New Zealand.
Oh gosh, you're speaking my language, Greg. My wallet is not happy.
Yeah.
I'm just, I found myself actually to a Japanese farm and ordering Wagyu. The good news is I've only ordered like once, and I said I was going to do it once every 6 months because it's quite expensive. But I tell you, it is just phenomenal. Once you taste that Japanese Wagyu, like Greg said, there's no going back.
There's no shaking it.
Yeah.
So 3 weeks in Japan. What a wonderful, wonderful trip. I bet
all vacation, or was there some work in there? Did you make an excuse to?
Well, I mean, when I'm on vacation, there's always time for me to catch up with work, but frankly, it was vacation, but I did put in work, and the time difference makes it a little bit easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're half a day ahead of us.
That's right. That's correct.
I
bet we're gonna have to, next time you come back, we're gonna have to take a deep dive into that trip. 3 weeks in Japan really sounds wonderful. All right, so Greg and Regine, just for some context and folks, by the way, Catherine and Amanda, if we can drop the link to our one-on-one with Regine from a few months back, so folks can check that out. But for the folks maybe that hasn't listened to that, or maybe haven't caught you on some of your other interviews, for their context, share a little information about Ochsner Health System and your role there, Regine.
Sure. Again, thank you, Scott, for having me. Since the last time I've been following you, I just love your nuggets of information, your tidbits of wisdom. It's just really phenomenal. So I'm really honored to be back. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Regine Villain, and I am the Chief Supply Chain and Support Services Officer at Ochsner Health in Louisiana, primarily. However, Ochsner is the leading not-for-profit healthcare system in the Gulf South. So we are in more than one state. We are practically in 3 states, Louisiana primarily. We also have facilities in Mississippi and a little bit in Alabama. We are 48 hospital owned, managed, and affiliated, and some specialty hospitals as well, and about 38,000 employees. And we are basically serving patients in every state in the country. I mean, in the country. And then also, since, we talk about travel being something that's an anchor for me, I believe we cover about 62 or 63 countries in the world where we receive patients.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if that, Greg, if that didn't, I mean, just the sheer breadth of that, if that doesn't impress you, I think what's really cool that came out in the interview is some of the really forward-thinking, innovative things that Regine did, especially in the earliest days of the pandemic. You'll have to check out our episode to dive deeper into that. And Greg, as we had uncovered and talked a little bit about in the green room, Regine has been enshrined into a Hall of Fame for her. We have our 2-decade rule around here, Regine. We don't break the 2-decade rule, right? But for all the mountains you and your teams have been moving, that really had to be some really cool recognition there, Regine.
Absolutely. I mean, it was a surprise, certainly. I'm not usually at a loss for words, but when the call came that I was actually nominated and received the award, it's the AMER Award for Bellwether. So those of you who don't know about Bellwether, it's basically, you talk about the Hall of Fame of supply chain, especially in healthcare. This is a place to be and to be seen and to know people. And so when you get that call and that nod, that is an industry recognition. It's not one of those things that is sought after where you have to vote and all of that. It is truly something that comes from colleagues. And so it was quite an honor to receive that.
Wow. Greg, your response, your thoughts based on the footprint Regine just shared and that incredible recognition.
Well, I thought, wow, was my response, because that's really impressive. It's interesting that it's kind of one of those, it almost sounds like a lifetime achievement award. I mean, it can't be a lifetime achievement award for people young, but it's let's call it an early to mid-career achievement award.
That is correct.
Call it that. Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that's fantastic. Look, there are a ton of practitioners out there doing fantastic things. And I think whenever we can highlight folks like you, Regine, and all of the goodness that you're doing for supply chain and for healthcare, which, Scott asked me, why should people care about healthcare supply chain? It's because it could save your life.
That's correct.
I mean, it's a heavy burden, and I really appreciate that. In fact, I've worked with healthcare companies in the past, and they, like you, do take that very seriously. That when it has to be there, it has to be there, because somebody's life is probably at stake. So.
Not probably, somebody's life is at stake, and that's really our true north. That's my true north when it comes to anything and everything that I do. And in my chair, everything, every call, every request, every email that comes is attached to somebody's life. And so it's an amazing, awesome, and scary responsibility, and take that very seriously. And of course, I wouldn't be able to do that without my team and the wonderful team that I have. And so I say all that recognition and all of those things, the accolades that come my way, it's really a testament of their hard work, because I really wouldn't be able to do all of that without them.
Well said. Well said. All right. So let's shift gears for a second, because we're going to try to help our global audience really better understand, especially some of the supply chain trends or challenges in the healthcare industry, perhaps that they should know more about. So whether it's 2 or 3 things, Regine, what are a couple of topics that come to your mind that more folks should know about, especially supply chain folks?
Well, I got to tell you, I am sure in other industries outside healthcare, there's a lot of conversation around technology, specifically AI. AI has become, the buzzword. right? And so it's no different in healthcare supply chain, where we are increasingly relying on advanced technology for efficiency and accuracy. And of course, this includes the use of AI for predictive analytics, blockchain for secure and transparent transactions, automation for repetitive tasks, and all of those things are things that we deal with on a daily basis with supply chain. And so when you think about the advance of AI into healthcare supply chain, it makes sense, but we're still dabbing into it and understanding exactly how it can help us. Instead of it just being buzzy, how can it really help us and help streamline the operation and really reduce errors and mitigate costs and all of that? Those things are important to us. And there are applications in AI where we think that we can definitely make some headways. And so, but technology generally is something that is becoming more and more of a topic of importance in healthcare supply chain.
Yeah. So Regine, if I can, that's the first one. I know we got a couple more. I'm going to get Greg. I know that she is talking your language when it comes to talking technology in healthcare, and especially real outcomes focused, not just as she put it, because it's buzzy and a lot of folks want to embrace it, but really where we get results. And in this case, maybe raise those service levels and those patient outcomes, I think. Greg, your thoughts?
Yes, that's what we'll do.
Okay.
What I was thinking was in healthcare, you have such a great example because they've been using AI for years in diagnosis and in practice. And so it opens your eyes to what, everybody loves to say, because they feel like they're defending people's jobs. They love to say AI is generally a party trick and it's never going to do this and can't do that. Let me assure you that is absolutely wrong. Except for ChatGPT, it is a party trick. But
yeah.
But that party trick is an enabler of much, much greater things that have been being used for decades in healthcare, in practice, and in the operating room and things like that. And it really opens your eyes to what it can do in an area like supply chain. And I think healthcare is a great place to look for advancements generally. But now when you think about how they're using AI and the example that they have before them, it's no wonder that they lead with that.
Yep. So Regine, before we move to your second challenge or trend or topic, anything else you want to add about AI based on what Greg just shared, Regine?
Well, I mean, I agree with him that AI has been used in a lot of, applications in healthcare generally, in the clinical world for sure. But certainly supply chain as an enabler of services and as facilitators who we are of everything that happens in the healthcare world, this is definitely a time and focus that is well warranted, because we are the ones that are, like I said, the enabler and the facilitator for care. We have a slogan that we use, and we basically fill the hands that heal. And so it's really important for us to be able to have all of that at our disposal as well.
Yeah, well said. Two quick follow-up comments there. First off, Adam says he's Louisiana born and raised.
Yes.
Welcome, Adam.
I saw that.
I know he did not say he was Louisiana born and raised, because if he was born and raised, it's Louisiana.
Okay. All right.
Isn't it, Regine?
Hey, I'm not getting involved in that. I'm not Louisiana born and raised.
Yeah, my college roommate was from Lake Charles, Louisiana.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Learn something new every day. I would just add, since we're started with technology, October is cybersecurity month, I believe. And as we've learned, the healthcare industry is one of the most targeted when it comes to the bad actors and stuff. So more and more, we'll probably see AI used in cybersecurity measures as well, right? Let the machines beat the other machines, perhaps. I don't know. All right.
That. I saw that, Adam. Who dat?
Adam, welcome. Let us know where you are now, Adam, though. So we know where your roots are. Let us know where you are now. And by the way, while we're taking a little, we put the previous episode with Regine, where we talked about some of the things we mentioned earlier there in the comments. And I should also add, Leah Luton, my mother, who joined us on the front end, she spent years, and we're not going to break the 2-decade rule, as a registered nurse and a certified diabetes educator. So, Mom, I'd love to get your take on what you're seeing, technology or otherwise. All right. So, Regine, first from technology, what's the second trend or challenge or topic that comes to mind when you think of healthcare and supply chain and maybe that intersection?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of emphasis these days on transparency as well, especially after the pandemic. There's been a lot of conversation about how transparency needs to become a lot more important in the healthcare supply chain. Basically, we need to make sure that we have solid information about the sourcing and production of the material. I mean, we're now going all the way up in the supply chain to truly understand provenance and understand, what is at stake and what could be an issue when it comes to our ability to source and our ability to get products, to our bedside. Like you said, the patient is my number one priority. The person at this bedside is the person that also I want to make sure that they have everything they need in order to care for those patients. And so when you think about transparency, that also helps to ensure ethical practices, prevent counterfeiting, and just builds trust with the community around the whole patient care and the healthcare providers. So I think transparency is definitely something that's on trend, and we're challenging our vendor partners to really go there with us. And, as part of the HERG board, which also promotes transparency, we're working on badging and we're working on implementing that as part of something that we hardwire in everything that we do.
Folks, I told y'all this was going to be home run stuff. And in that second point with what Regine shared, we could have a 6-hour series. Greg, she mentioned one of your favorite words of all time, provenance. Your thoughts based on what Regine just shared?
Yeah, well, we have to get to this transparency because provenance is so important in supply chain, and it's not just for life-saving materials; it's for everything, right? I mean, we want to know where it's made, we want to know how it's made, we want to know by whom it's made, and hopefully it's made by free people, and we want to know what kind of materials that it's made from, and hopefully non-conflict materials and,
That's correct.
and things like that. So that's what's so critical. And supply chain has long been a business of obfuscation, right? Trying to keep everyone from knowing your secret, not usually for nefarious reasons, but mostly because your position in the marketplace is so tenuous that just about anybody could do it in many cases. And in a lot of parts of business, if anyone can do it, lots of people do it, and prices go down and transparency goes up and that sort of thing. And I think we're starting to see the tide shift towards opening that up. I mean, the governments, frankly, are really forcing that with
That's correct.
Scope 3 emissions standards and human rights standards for shipments vis-a-vis the supply chain. And so I think we'll start to see more and more of that, and it will accrue to the benefit of everyone because we'll get the bad actors out of the industry. It will change pricing for the better, I believe. And we'll start to see more reliable and more available products and products that are more sustainable and probably better quality because most of the cheaters are building junk and trying to sell it as quality materials. That's more prevalent even than human slavery or counterfeiting or I guess that's arguably a type of counterfeiting, but then conflict minerals and all that is just poorly produced product that nobody kind of knows where it comes from.
Gosh, I so agree with that. I think, Scott, you're going to have Grant and I back and just have more conversation around that. There's so much to unpack there.
I
Yeah.
completely agree. But the good news, since the front end of the show, we focus on so many negative developments out in the industry, is I love kind of both
One
of y'all.
positive one.
Yeah, one positive one. That's right. But in the last couple minutes here, I love how both of y'all kind of painted a picture of where we're going in the future, and how positive, because both of y'all are speaking to the truth that out there, and so many of these things that have been long. What's this phrase that Greg used? The business of obfuscation. I had to say that real slow because that's a big word, but it's so true. And now, thanks to technology, thanks to trends, thanks to real leadership, action-driven leadership, and many other things, we're able to bring these issues, these travesties, up to the surface, and better yet, do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, Regine and Greg, I'm with you. Regine, I'll give you the last word before we move on to the third topic.
Well, I mean, I don't necessarily need to add to that, but it's adding a little bit to what Greg alluded to. The third piece that I think about is there's an increased focus on sustainability and community impact as well.
Mm.
So the growing trend towards sustainable, a more sustainable practice in the healthcare supply chain, reducing waste, more eco-friendly materials, implementing more efficient logistics strategies. When you think about, for example, I mean, I worked in New York for a long time. You think about how jammed and how packed New York City streets are. If you can think of a way to avoid having multiple deliveries, for example, driving down a tiny loading dock all day long, that's a big impact, not only on your operation, but also there's an environmental impact that one has to definitely be aware of. And so the aim is to minimize all of those environmental impact and everything else that we know on the healthcare operation, while making sure that we're ensuring high quality patient care. I mean, there's a whole movement around making sure that we're diving a little bit more and becoming more grounded in understanding how we're impacting everything around us. Certainly, patient care, again, is a true north, but then we think about the impact on the environment, the impact in our communities. You think about a place like Ochsner that's in Louisiana, and unfortunately, Louisiana, and I love my Louisiana. I'm not born and raised, but I definitely love Louisiana. But from a health outcome, Louisiana is 49 or 50 out of 50, right? It's not the best. And so, as a supply chain leader, it's also important to understand what I can do to help impact the outcome, the health outcomes of the communities, and then expand a little bit more outside of the four walls of what people think about when they think about supply chain.
No shortage of challenges, and I'm glad you brought that back up. I know we talked a good bit about that in your previous interview, and I think that's such a noble mission. Beyond the kind of the isolated individual outcomes, just elevating the whole region to a more healthier state. And I love how y'all have really embraced that, not beyond words, in your actions and your initiatives. Greg, when it comes to sustainability and community impact, I think that was kind of how we couched that third topic. Your thoughts, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, I'll argue till the day that I die that sustainability and reasonable cost and reliability and speed in the supply chain, they're all compatible, right? I mean, I spent most of my career trying to get things here cheaper, faster, right? And with more reliability at a higher level than we could before. And I know it can be done. I mean, it can definitely be done. And I think the new technologies that we talked about right out of the gate, and transparency, and all of those things lend to that. So, and honestly, it doesn't matter, because this political debate that we're having in the States doesn't matter, because all of the other countries in the world are just mandating it.
Mm-hmm.
So American companies will have to comply with this thing that's such a hot potato here in the States, because the rest of the world is going that direction. And they will find, because that's what we do in America, they will find a way to make it economical. So it can definitely be done. you opened when we started talking about waste and all of that sort of thing. You opened with waste when we started talking about sustainability. There is just so much waste that if we just eliminate that, we reduce cost and increase sustainability.
That's correct.
Right. And if we start with that, which is the core of what supply chain has done for so many decades, that's kind of the basic table stakes in supply chain. So if we just start with table stakes, then there's a lot of opportunity here. And there is so much efficiency that can be created. And we have so many brilliant minds. And now with the assistance of AI and blockchain and various and sundry other technologies, we can do it. I know we can.
Absolutely.
I'm going to make sure we do.
So it's interesting. You said table stakes. This conversation comes full circle back to
right back to stakes,
right?
Yes.
All right. Sorry, folks. I had to say it. All right. Regine, Regine, I want to protect your time. I know I can only imagine how busy of a Monday you have. I want to two final questions. So one, Regine, we get asked all the time. In fact, I'm surprised it hasn't come up in today's live stream, for career advice for folks that want to end up in the C-suite like you, Regine. What's one piece? I know there's lots of other lots of advice, but what's one critical piece of advice you would offer up?
All right. So you're talking executive, not just supply chain, correct?
That's right. That's right.
Well, I mean, I think I can borrow from what I know, in my chair as a supply chain officer. Basically, I think it's important to gain an understanding of whatever it is that you're interested in. So, for example, for me, it was all about understanding and knowing all of the aspects of supply chain. So it's everything from understanding, procurement, logistics, inventory management, customer service, the whole nine. And so in whatever your trade is, it's really important for you to go deep and wide so that you can ascend and be able to support. The other thing that I would say is, developed strong leadership and strategic thinking skills, right? Because whatever it is that you're going to be doing, you're going to be leading a team. You're going to be making strategic decisions that impact an entire organization. So it's going to be very important for you to be able to communicate effectively with other top executives and basically operate at the top of your skills. Strong leadership, like I said, so make sure that you're learning, you are attending training programs, and mentoring is also something that is truly, truly important. People underestimate the power of mentoring, both as a mentor and as a mentee. And so I would definitely encourage you and challenge you to make sure that you are either a mentor or a mentee or both. I mean, there's nothing wrong in being both, and making sure that you have a complement of folks around you that can help you and challenge you so that you can experience what it's like. And so for me, what I would end with is I would just say, be curious, right? Be bold. First of all, the whole idea of that, no, I'm not going to do that. It's not really my job. That should be banned in your vocabulary. So you need to be curious, be bold, be flexible, be authentic, but be humble as well. Know that you're not the person who knows the most in the room just because you have a title. And the deference to expertise is something that I practice every day. When I am standing at the loading dock talking to my receiver, he or she is the expert, and I need to allow them to let me understand exactly what's going on so that perhaps I can help. And so the deference to expertise and understanding that you're not the smartest person in the room is a huge, huge, huge thing.
Well said, Regine. Hall of Fame advice from a Hall of Famer, and I love how practical that advice was. I mean, clearly you're sharing things that you're living and doing, which it's where some of the best advice comes from. Greg, I'm going to get your favorite takeaway from Regine's appearance here today in just a minute, but I want to protect Regine's time. How can folks? So Regine, I know that you're extremely busy, but you occasionally get out for, a keynote here or industry meetings or what have you. Or I bet you love to talk shop, over maybe a coffee or a good meal. I don't know, but how can folks?
Working.
Yeah, that's right. How can folks connect with you as well as the Ochsner Health System?
Well, certainly they can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and happy to chat. And to your point, I love to learn. For me, learning is a lifelong thing. And so, if there are other industry gatherings and other things that I can participate in, or can lend my voice and so-called expertise to, I'm happy to do that. And love to continue to expand my horizon when it comes to the ability to reach out to as many people as possible. But I appreciate this platform. I know that you also have a varied audience, and I just love that I can be a part of it.
Well, we're 2 for 2, and you brought it as advertised. I can't wait till the next conversation. Yes, we're gonna get you and Greg back together for maybe a bigger bonus episode of the Buzz. We'll see. But in the meantime, want a big thanks to our friend and Hall of Famer Regine Villain, Chief Supply Chain and Support Services Officer with Ochsner Health System. Thank you so much, Regine, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you,
Thanks,
Scott. Thank you, Amanda, and everybody behind the scene working on this.
That's right. Have a great week.
All right, you too.
All right, Greg. I really wish, we say it a lot, but man, and we're not doing her justice, how innovative some of the things she did, especially in her career, but especially more recently at the beginning of the pandemic. She saw some things that the whole industry and the world was really late in seeing, and better yet, she saw it and did things about it. But Greg, out of everything she shared here today, what is one of your favorite takeaways from the 30 minutes or so we spent with Regine Villain?
Yeah. First of all, of course, she has her own ideas, and she's her own person. But my God, that last bit, it was like she was channeling the late, great Sandra McQuillan. You could just feel the spirit, the words, the approach to business, the approach to leadership, the approach to mentoring, all those things. They must have been separated at birth.
Mm.
So similar and similarly visionary and committed to excellence and committed to sharing that excellence and the credit for that excellence, throughout the organization. Really, just wow.
Mm. I agree.
Eerily similar, right?
Well, that was like a 2-minute masterclass. Next time we have Regine back, we're going to have to structure it as a masterclass, and not just healthcare supply chain leadership, but leadership, for that matter. Yeah. Well, really enjoyed the Buzz. We're up against our time here today. Greg, a pleasure. This was a great one here today. What a great way to start the week. Big thanks to you, Greg, and also all the folks. We couldn't get to all the comments, but thanks for being here. Thanks for all your contributions. Big thanks to Catherine and Amanda behind the scenes for helping to make today happen. And folks, whatever you do, this is, as y'all know, we wrap very similarly with every show, but this is a perfect example here.
Mm-hmm.
On behalf of our entire team here at Supply Chain Now, Scott Luton challenging you to take something that was said here today. Take something that was said here today, put it into practice. Be like Regine, right? Do good, impact your community, look for real results and outcomes, not just lip service. The world has too much supply of lip service. Comes down to action. So with that, I challenge you to do good, to give forward, and to be the change. And we'll see you next time right back here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.